Welcome to the Athletic Football Show After Dark. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me tonight, it's my co-host, Derrik Klassen. Derrik, how you doing, bud?
As good as I think I can be after having to watch the Raiders do whatever they did. Honestly, both teams at the end of that Raiders-Chargers game, by the way, like the Chargers were never really going to lose the game, but they tried like 3 different times to give the Raiders like a way back into it, which I found at least it gave us something to look forward to in what was otherwise kind of a weird one.
This has been baptism by fire for you. You are a West Coast guy who's had to do multiple Sunday night recap shows in Central Time, and now we're doing this at 12 o'clock, the latest I think we've ever started one of these since we got going, and we had to deal with that Raiders performance. But hopefully the rest of the night and enough fun stuff kept you juiced up enough to make this work. Let's start with the unfortunate part of this. The Raiders offense and primetime Geno Smith performance. It's going to make it really difficult for the agenda moving forward.
It was bad, but I'm already gonna do some coping. The first interception was bad. That one was like that was the one I cannot excuse. Where it's funny. Like last week we were like, oh my god, look at him just immediately ripping that seam ball, and he pins it right next to I think it was like Robert Spillane in week 1, and he puts it right past his ear hole. This week, Alohi Gilman is ready for it. He's playing as the free safety over the middle, and he like never gains depth, by the way. He just immediately is like, oh, here comes the seam runner. I'm going to sprint to it. He breaks that up. And
it was the same play. It was the same play they started the Patriots game with. And that speaks to a larger theme that I do want to hit on a lot over the course of this show is that the Chargers defense is just insanely well coached. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I'm sure they were ready for that exact play, the same way they started with it last week, and Alohi Gilman is on that shit from the start. The interceptions, honestly, are not even my biggest issue with the game. So the 3 interceptions, that first one you're talking about, that's a bad decision. It's a nice play by Gilman. The second one is an arm punt. It's kind of like a whatever.
Yeah, I didn't
the ball on 3rd and 6 down inside the 5. And the third one, it's not a bad decision to try to throw that seam ball to Jacoby Myers. It's just a great play by Derwin James. Like in theory, that route against cover 2 is probably where that ball should go. My issue with the game overall from Geno is that there were 4 or 5 misses in this game that you just don't typically see from him. We don't have to go through all of them, but just off the top of my head, the Brock Bowers play in the end zone on that little double move that probably should have been a touchdown. He misses Jacoby Myers on what was really one of the only downfield shots they had the entire game on that play where they lifted the corner to the left side and then he had Myers on the outbreaker and just sails it over him. And then he missed a few more throws in this game. And I mean, even if you have issues with Geno's decision-making, which I totally understand where you'd land on that. If you watched him over the last few years, he's going to try to fit some stuff in that can be frustrating and volatile. It's the nature of his game, but accuracy is typically not the problem. And so for him to be as scattershot as he was in this game, I think really spoke to just how poorly he played when you compare it to last week. And even over the last 3 or 4 years, Orlovsky said on the broadcast, I think it's right. He's been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. And today he was kind of all over the place in a way I just didn't really expect to see coming.
Yeah, he was weirdly inaccurate. And I do think so he was bad, but I do find kind of what's interesting about the matchup between these two teams is I think what we're going to get from the Raiders for a lot of the year is that even in the games that they're good, they're going to be mostly like a boomer bust-ish type offense. And that was even true in week 1 when they were good. It's like
absolutely
they had all these chunks, but also Geno took like 4 sacks. He still had a pick. The run game was not very good. And the Chargers are a defense that is pretty good at putting the lid on things, not giving you explosives, and making you be perfect every play. And there are a handful of teams that can do that, and they can play that way against the Chargers, and they're going to be able to live. I don't think the Raiders, the way that they're constructed, are able to do that. They certainly can't in the run game. And even for as much as I love Geno, like that's just, again, it's not the way that he plays. He's more of a Stafford, Dak, like I'm going to chuck it down the field and we're going to live with chunk plays rather than dink and dunk all over the field.
I love that you brought that up. So, I mean, obviously the most egregious example of that is they had a 20-play drive that resulted in a field goal because they got 1 penalty, right? I mean, there's no better example than that. But a couple of numbers that I just wanted to throw out that really speak to kind of the style of the game and the way that you're referring. So through 3 quarters, the Raiders had 12 running back carries for 36 yards. Their rushing success rate was actually pretty decent, but that was a couple of Geno scrambles and then several quarterback sneaks on 3rd and short. In terms of running back runs, they could not run them out of those looks. And if you're playing against the Chargers, it's almost a prerequisite. Like you're going to need to run them out of those looks in order for your offense to click in the way that you want it to. And the Raiders are incapable of doing that. And you mentioned the down the field throws. With 7:45 left in the 4th, I didn't check it at the end of the game, but it was already out of hand at this point. No completions of 10-plus air yards for the Raiders in this game. 0. halfway through the fourth quarter.
That is obscene. And that's the thing. Like, they have to live with chunks. And that's the other thing is, like, if you're going to be a team that lives with chunks, you kind of need your best skill player to be at his peak powers. And I think Brock Bowers very obviously in this game was not be able to move the way that we've seen him move, and certainly was last week. And so that was another big issue for them. You make a great point of, like, you have to be able to run the Chargers out of these looks, because I think one of the things that they do really well is the way that Minter crafts his pass rush plan is fantastic. Multiple times sending Derwin James in this game, like just attacking the running back and like really making the pocket get muddy that way. And then using Deion Henley the way that he's used him basically forever, but again, really, really well in this game, just using all these non-pass rusher bodies to be a huge threat in the pocket. And I think the Raiders just in this game had no answer for it.
It's such a good thing to bring up. The last stat I wanted to throw out about the two high stuff before digging into exactly what you just said. Geno in this game, when I looked up those stats halfway through the fourth quarter, 11 of 18 for 70 yards against two high looks, 3.9 yards per attempt with 2 sacks. So they did a fantastic job putting a lid on it the whole game. The pass rush plan is such a good thing to bring up. They did the same blitz twice, and I actually don't know if it was technically a blitz. The second one, I know it wasn't. The second one was a simulated pressure. And what you're referring to is they have Derwin James, who this idea of Derwin James can play all the positions was something that was a cool idea at some points in his career, but not something that was ever actual reality in a positive way for the Chargers. It now is like an actual positive reality for the Chargers.
It used to be all the other players were bad. Derwin James, we need you to play a bunch of different things. Now it's all the players are good, and so we can do whatever we want with him.
I agree with that to an extent. I also think that Derwin had a couple of rough years during the Brandon Staley years. And I think part of that was driven by injury, but I also think part of it was his head was just spinning a little bit. And I think that there was, and this is a larger conversation about Derwin specifically, but he's somebody that I did a story about him. I can't remember what year it was. It was when I was at the Ringer and spent a decent amount of time with him. And he's just somebody that kind of radiates joy about football, specifically when he's at his best. And he just seems so beaten down during those years. And I don't know how much of it was mental. I don't know how much of it was lingering injuries, but he was not the same player. And so it's been really fun to see him kind of click back into being one of those difference-making guys who is like a true Swiss Army knife. And so the play that you're referring to, that pass rush plan, they have him blitzing, and they're running a stunt with him and the edge to that side. And he's just caving in the tackle. And then the first one was Khalil Mack comes inside for the sack. And the second one, Tuli Tuipulotu comes in for a pressure. And why I think that's such a good thing to bring up, and why I think it's such a good example for just the details within the Chargers offense, is that a lot of these teams who run simulated pressures, there are some offensive coaches who aren't really scared of simulated pressures, because you're having to kind of shift you have to balance out the rush as you're doing this. A lot of teams do this, where guys are kind of slanting and not really moving upfield in order to balance the rush. And then your fourth rusher, because you're only bringing 4, is coming from depth and isn't really like a dangerous player. And so the fact that these simulated pressures for the Chargers are these kind of pointed strikes where you have a really good plan for how you're picking on one specific player. And in doing that, that's a level of aggression while you're still pairing it with 7 guys in coverage. Like, I think it's just a very distilled example of what makes the Chargers such a dangerous defense. And we saw it twice today, along with all the other stuff that Derwin James did.
And he is kind of unique in the way that he can do some of that stuff. Cause like there's how many safeties can you really trust to be like, he can be the pick player and allow somebody else to loop around?
He's not even a safety anymore. He's like a linebacker nickel. Like, that's what he is now.
Yeah, like there's just not a lot of guys who I think you could do that. And like what's interesting is if you're sending James, like the back is looking for that kind of body. They're looking for the linebacker. They're looking for the safety. So you're taking him with his eyes and you're moving the running back out of the way. And then if he's picking the tackle, because he's one of like 4 guys built his way who can do that, and then you just get Khalil Mack running free, looping around it. It's just like it's cool that they've been able to weaponize him again like this.
And then you talk about you look at the other defensive, the guys in the secondary for the Chargers tonight. There were so many really nice moments for all of, like, on a national level, the no-name players in the Chargers secondary. The fact that Tony Jefferson is like coming up big in nationally televised games 2 years after he retired, I think speaks to what's in the water with Jesse Minter in their facility in Los Angeles. I mean, one of the first kind of high-profile incompletions of Geno in the game is the deep shot he tries to take on the post. And I can't remember if it was to Tucker or Thornton. But the Chargers, I believe, are playing quarters on that play. And Tony Jefferson does clamp down a little bit on the innermost route, some sort of inbreaker. And when you have that, right, against quarters, If the safety to that side is going to step down, it kind of creates a one-on-one with the corner where you're supposed to throw that post. So it's not a bad decision by Geno, but Tony Jefferson plays it so well that he's able to account for the in-breaking route while still being able to make a play on the post route. And then the other similar play in my mind, if we're trying to think about good choices that are made wrong by the defense, he tries to throw that outbreaker against in the end zone, and Alohi Gilman just makes a crazy nice play on it. Like all these guys, and this is to me such a great example the entire game of how hard the Chargers defense makes it on you because of how sticky they are and how cohesive they are in coverage, even if you don't have a lot of superstars back there.
The Gilman one was incredibly impressive to me, where I think, again, they were playing quarters because that's just what they like to do. And they run like, again, it was like a little outbreaker sail route or whatever, basically to the left pylon. And he just flies to it. Like Gilman in coverage, I think, has become a much better player. He still missed a couple tackles in this game, and I think that might always be an issue for him. But in coverage, he's like 2 years ago, I was not sure you could really put him on the field. And now he's like a legitimately like useful player for them, which again speaks to what Minter's been able to put together with really, other than Derwin James. It's a lot of makeshift guys that you would have thought were makeshift players going into a couple years ago.
They were missing Elijah Molden in this game, and Tony Jefferson played well. They were missing Denzel Perryman in this game. And I, mostly on the dots when I was rewatching plays on the All-22, I could see Troy Dye like getting really good depth under a lot of like intermediate routes and coverage, which is like he's a backup linebacker playing in this game. And they got a lot of those. So just a lot of guys coming in spot duty and playing well. And I think that speaks to being a really well-coached team. We'll see what the ceiling of the Chargers defense is, because now, especially if they're going to be without Khalil Mack for an extended period of time, I still worry a little bit that this is going to be a defense that, because they're just so incredibly well coached, they're going to make things such a slog against. There's going to be a line. And if you're below the line, the Chargers are going to make your day really, really hard. I think the Raiders and their offensive line, with Alex Kappa being in there and a handful of Brock Bowers, they're below the line. I think the Chiefs, without Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and a couple offensive linemen playing new positions, they might be below the line right now. When we get deeper into the season, I'll just be curious to see what it looks like against teams above the line. But if you're below it, they're going to do this to you. Like, they're going to make your day really, really difficult consistently down in and down out.
I think if we start talking about them by the end of November, of like, if you didn't have a good day against the Chargers, I'm not going to take you seriously when we get to January. Like, it feels like they're going to be that kind of defense.
It's a great barometer. I think that'll be a good way to judge teams moving forward. Any thoughts about the Chargers offense and just what you saw today? Any like takeaways, surprises, or just kind of about what you expect from this group at this point?
I mean, it's still frustrating that the run game is not what it is. Again, a lot of that has to just do with the offensive line issues that they've suffered. Otherwise, it kind of just has been what it has been. Like, I think Justin Herbert played not his best game, but still had a number of great throws in this game. Obviously, the one where he's rolling to his right in the red zone is insane. The missile he throws to Quentin Johnston is like, when the ball comes out of his hand, man, it just flies so fast. And so obviously Quentin Johnston's pretty wide open on that play, but he just rips it to him. So I thought Herbert played fine. Again, the offensive line, the run game is going to continue to be an issue, but they kind of did what they had to do in this game. I don't have a whole lot to say.
Yeah, I feel not a ton of surprises or anything learned about this offense in this game. I think that the run game still continues to be inconsistent. I thought Herbert, the thing that keeps jumping out to me about the first couple games that we've seen from him is just how much he's able to use his legs right now. I think that applies to him being a scrambler. I mean, you think about it, the first drive, he picks up, I think, 2 scramble first downs on that first drive before he ends up throwing to that touchdown to Keenan Allen. And even that includes him buying time outside of the pocket, sliding up into his right. And so him being able to do enough stuff on schedule while still being able to hit those 2 or 3 missile shots a game. You mentioned the one to Quentin Johnston, which is just a perfect cover 3 beater where he fakes the deep crosser and then bends it back, which when you know you're getting a lot of single high, it's a very good call from Greg Roman. Then the other play where I was just like, oh shit, like this is just real Justin Herbert stuff. Early in the third quarter, the Raiders are playing like a little bit of like a palm Z coverage where, you know, kind of his quarters cover 2, kind of like a little bit blurred depending on how the routes distribute. And the corner on that side thought that Keenan Allen might have been running an out route and he was trying to like trap it. And as soon as the corner's a little bit flat footed, Herbert just rips the whole shot to Trey Harris. Like, you're going to get one of those a game where a corner is going to be like half a step out of position and Justin Herbert is going to make a throw on time that very few quarterbacks in the league even start to think about, but it's the first thing that's on his mind when he's reading out those plays.
But between what has stuck out to me in this game and really with Herbert in general is one, extremely willing to make those throws, which are some of the coolest throws on the field. And also something that's always been true of him, but I think showed up especially like in the first half of this game. He throws around defender leverage so well. And there were a number of plays over the middle of the field where it's like he knows his guy's running into a linebacker. I'll put the ball on his back hip or I'll put it low so the safety, just stuff like that. I thought he did really well early in this game. Obviously, second half, the whole entire offense kind of petered out a little bit, but I thought first half he did a really good job of that.
This is just another example to me, this game and some of the bigger moments, like that 4th and 2 early in the third quarter that the Chargers end up going for. And their Chargers use play action on the play. Matlock goes in kind of like a fast motion. They actually do a very good job of accounting for Max Crosby. It's Matlock and Omarion Hampton going to that side in a play action protection. And then Herbert hits the second inbreaker to Keenan Allen. And you just watch the Raiders linebackers in coverage. And it's like, there are a lot of differences between the current state of the Raiders defense and the current state of the Chargers defense. But when you watch those like middle of the field, second and third level defenders for the Raiders in this game, and you compare it to what you're getting from the Chargers, it's just a vastly different experience. Like Deion Henley right now and a Landon Roberts right now are very different sorts of NFL players.
Hey, I'm not gonna take a Landon Roberts slander on this podcast, even though it's pretty warranted for what he does. And what's funny is like one of the only major incompletions over the middle of the field that I can remember the Raiders forcing was actually Tyree Wilson getting his hand on a ball that Herbert was trying to throw like the dig and like a cross country dagger concept, and Tyree Wilson gets his hand up, and it's like it was there. He was gonna complete the throw, by the way. Like it was open, and Herbert knew it was there, and Tyree Wilson gets a hand on it. So I guess if the Raiders can somehow find a way to do that 6 times a game and make up for their linebackers, great, but I would not be betting on that.
I also think that moving forward, like that play and how they steal extra bodies and protection, when you're a play action team, you're allowed to do that. And I think that to me is the best version of what this Chargers passing game is going to be, is if they're in some of these heavier personnel groupings and then they can use some creative ways to get 4 hands on a really good pass rusher when you don't necessarily feel great about your right tackle on an island. It's just a smart way to account for your personnel while also understanding that just as a passing game, you're probably going to have to be explosive based on the types of receivers that you have. And that's what they've tried to do over the last couple of weeks. And so about what you'd expect in terms of the game plan and some of those moments from the Chargers offense. Before we move on from this game, on a scale of 1 to 10, how enjoyable and satisfying has it been to watch Deion Henley play football for the first 2 weeks after predicting this is going to be the all-pro Deion Henley season?
Dude, he's incredible. He is I think coverage-wise, I always was confident that he could be this level of player. The fact that between the tackles he is what he is now, that's the part of it to me that is really standing out. Like the way, obviously as a blitzer, he's
made a tackle like 3 yards deep in the backfield in this game.
Dude, the
like
one
in the A-gap.
Yes, and they've done more of like firing him on rundowns and run blitzes to really use his physicality. Like that is the part of his game that even when I loved him, I was like, I would love like 10% more of that. And through 2 games, I think we've gotten some of that. So it really feels like this actually is the season that he can be an all-pro level player. I could not be more excited.
Let's move on to the Texans and the Bucs. This one, I kind of wish those games had been flipped so we would have gotten a little bit more juice later in the night when we all kind of needed it. That last drive from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the most Baker Mayfield stretch that has ever Baker Mayfield in the history of the NFL. And I'm enjoying it. Somebody tweeted at us over the course of that game, and the new segment that we're doing on Sunday nights that isn't how could you not be romantic about football, picking a couple moments from the games that day. It could just be Baker Mayfield every week if you wanted it to be. Like, how could you not be romantic about football? Just Baker Mayfield, period. And tonight was a very good example of that.
Every time Baker Mayfield left the pocket in this game, something weird happened. Like he had the fumble to his right that like Danielle Hunter kind of forces, but not really, because like Baker's like trying to, I think, switch the ball in his hands and like knocks it out of his own hand, which is one thing. He had a couple of plays where he gets like somersaulted because he gets tackled. He had another one where he got smoked. Like Baker was doing all of the whatever happens when he leaves the pocket, complete mystery box type of game. And then I thought early in the game too, like on the opening script, he was throwing darts to everybody. Like he had the sidearm whip to Shepard. Obviously a couple of
another play outside of the pocket.
Like yes,
we
exactly.
were about how much the off-schedule playmaking he showed last year was going to be able to translate to this year. And that's scrambling. It's, off schedule outside of the pocket, making plays out of structure. And we've seen a decent amount of that over the first couple weeks. The only two quarterbacks through 2 weeks that have generated more EPA on scrambles than Baker Mayfield are Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, which is a similar sort of pace to what we saw last year. And so the fact that he does it on the 4th and 10 to kind of keep them alive and help them eventually win the game is a nice moment. But this is something that he's been doing consistently over the first couple games, and something he did consistently last year. And it has turned into like a real weapon for the Bucs offense.
It really has. And like against this type of pass rush, you have to do it right. Cause this is not, this pass rush is amazing, obviously from Houston, but they are more about being speed and getting immediate disruption. And when you do that, sometimes you can just open up crevices in the pocket that if the quarterback is fast enough, quick enough to see it, he can just get up and go. Baker Mayfield will just get up and go. And so he might not always, have the huge 30-yard runs that maybe Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen can do. But if you're going to give him a little bit of space in the pocket and be a little bit unsound in the way that you're getting to the quarterback, he can punish you for it. And he did in a lot of big moments in this game.
After the scramble, I think that this play is going to be overlooked just because the scramble was such a game-swinging play. But him stepping up a little bit in the pocket and finding Bucky Irving underneath against Azeez Al-Shire for that 22-yard gain, that's a really nice moment from him with the game on the line. And I think that there were plenty of those today. You mentioned the Texans offensive line getting upfield. And I think what's important to note about that today is that even though Baker had some key, huge moments late, the Bucs passing game was not good enough to win a typical NFL game today. Their running game is one of the biggest differences in this entire game, is that even both quarterbacks were under duress for most of the game. It got worse for the Bucs as the games went along. That first touchdown drive, the touchdown he hits to Ryan Griffin coming over the middle, they've got Graham Barton on an island against Danielle Hunter, and they've got Luke Gadecki on an island against Will Anderson. And they have time. Gadecki comes out of the game, and then I think things start to cascade a little bit. Hunter has a little bit of a plan for Graham Barton as the game goes along. That little crossover sack he had was absolutely disgusting. Gnarly. And so eventually, I think because they weren't giving enough help to those tackles, Baker was under duress for a huge portion of the game, and it was tough to move the ball through the air. But even as that was happening, the Bucs run game in today, I mean, it felt like every single time they ran the ball, it was 6 yards here, it was 7 yards there. They finished the game with a 63% design rush success rate in this game per Next Gen Stats. They averaged 5.6 yards per carry. And sometimes 5.6 yards per carry can be a little bit misleading. You've got a lot of twos, a lot of threes, a couple ones, a couple zeros, and you hit a 60-yarder. Not today. That was not the case with the Bucs run game today. They had anything they wanted every time they wanted to run it. And that really was a steadying force when they had to worry about those two Banshees coming off the edge the entire game.
This was it felt to me like the Houston Texans defensive line, like their interior players were starting 3 yards off the ball. That makeshift, kind of makeshift interior. Obviously, Ben Bredesen typically plays guard, was playing center in this game. And you obviously still had Malcolm in the game. Those guys were just moving people. Like this to me was not an issue of like I thought Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. were fine off the edges. And I didn't even think the linebackers played all that poorly when they got a chance. It's just, again, like you were saying, every time the ball was snapped, the 3-tech, they're getting 4 hands on him and he's just gone. Like he just has no shot of living in the play. And so I thought the Bucs run game did a great job there. And then even in the moments when it wasn't perfect, Bucky Irving is just one of those guys, like his vision, his footwork behind the line of scrimmage, how quick and explosive he is. He can make an oh shit, we have a guy 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage into a 4-yard gain somehow. And that's how you keep the success rate as high as it was and get all these plays. So I just thought it was such a great mix of them being able to do that stuff.
A decent argument in most situations. Hard to make it here considering Rachaad White was better than Bucky Irving today on his carries. Rachaad White had a 70% success rate on his carries today. I think that's a lot of structural wins for the Bucs offense. And I'm completely with you. If you look at a few different types of runs, this started to manifest over the course of the game. I think the Bucs had a really good plan for how they wanted to go after the Texans front based on where the strengths and relative weaknesses are. It was a lot of gap scheme runs where they're leaving the end man on the line of scrimmage unblocked. And that can be some sort of trap, some sort of counter. Sometimes it's the guard, sometimes it's the center, sometimes it's the tight end. So you're leaving Hunter and Anderson accounted for by some sort of puller. And then you're using angles and the ability to get on the second level in that way where you're just moving Sheldon Rankins and Mario Edwards and whoever's full Fatukasi, all those guys kind of cycling in, the lesser players on that team, and they're just dumping them in the linebackers' laps. So a lot of it was gap scheme runs, but they had one at some point. It was just straight duo. I tweeted out a picture of it exactly like you said. When you pause the tape, when Rachaad White is at the line of scrimmage, the entire defensive line is 3 yards off the ball. Like, to do that with what is kind of a makeshift offensive line, especially after Gadecki goes out, it's extremely impressive. Like, this run game ecosystem over the last 2 years has become such a defined strength for this team in a way that's really notable.
It's really cool to see too, especially because, again, with changing offensive coordinators for the third time in 3 years, we were wondering like how much of some of this stuff were they going to be able to put together. And obviously week one, I think it was a little bit more shaky, but that's week one for anybody. That can just be, you know, not your best look that you're going to have all season. And I think for the Bucs run game to at least show the Bucs run game, I think showed the floor and some of the creativity that we saw from last year. I think the passing game, again, kind of like you mentioned, a little bit up and down. Some of that is just the pass protection stuff. But I think the fact that they have looked like a pretty put together offense in a lot of ways to me is extreme. Like the fact that Baker Mayfield continues to play well. Mike Evans still looks very healthy. Emeka Egbuka continues to make plays. Like they just look like maybe not 100% of the offense that they were last year, but I think that we were worried we're like, oh, are they only going to be 70%? It feels like they are closer to 100%, I would say, or at least will be by the time it really starts to matter.
The running game was great for the Bucs, but the Texans defense, I think, absolutely still played well enough to win this game. And there was just so many frustrating moments for Houston. I don't even really know where to start with them. I guess we can probably kick it off with that goal line sequence that Nick Haley, CJ Stroud, and I think everybody associated with the Texans is probably going to be thinking about for a very long time. The one that happened, I think it was at the start of the fourth quarter, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, I'm just like, I think for the first half of this game or so, CJ Stroud like generally played really well, but I think he and the rest of the offense kind of lost their minds that this game was gone. Obviously, you have that whole entire sequence where they're trying to do like sprint outs in the red zone, which sprint outs in the red zone are always, to me, it's not that it's a bad call, but it's usually a bad call in the sense of like we clearly don't trust our offensive line to win.
Yeah.
And obviously with this offensive line, like why would you? Especially against, you know, you've got guys like Vita Vea and stuff on the other side. I totally get it. But that to me is just like we don't have other options in this part of the field. And so from that standpoint, I kind of get it, but it's frustrating. So you have that moment. And then the almost interception that CJ Stroud throws at the end of the game, I don't think I'm exaggerating. That to me is that might be the dumbest play I've ever seen him make, where he is like backed up in the pocket a little bit. I think it's like 3rd and 10 or something like that. And he's trying to throw the ball. I don't even know where he's trying to throw it to. Like there's a shallow crosser running like, 4 yards ahead of the line of scrimmage, but he throws it like 6 yards short of that, like at the defensive line, standing on the line of scrimmage. And I'm just you can't do that.
I understand how that happens when you look at just how the play played out. So that's the 3rd and 10 that you're referring to, I think happens with like 5:30 left in the 4th quarter. The Bucs are in like a cover 0 look and it's 3rd and 10. And so I think that he doesn't want to throw that quick slant because if he throws it with a corner hammering down on it, it's not going to go for a first down anyway. It's still probably the play he should have made, but I think that's why that gets eliminated from his mind. And I believe, because it's that cover 0 look, he doesn't think that Levante David's going to be standing there. The Bucs dropped David and multiple defensive linemen into that spot. It's not excusable, but I think that's probably the thought process that comes with it. I think the issue on that play speaks to where this Texans team still is, which is frustrating because it's where they were last year. They just don't have a good plan against these pressure looks that they're seeing from these teams. CJ Stroud in this game, I believe, finished 4 of 10 for 60 yards against the blitz. Like anytime the Bucs sent pressure, it seemed like the Texans had an issue with it. I think he finished with like negative 0.56 EPA per dropback against the blitz, which is a very bad number. And it speaks to some of the issues that the Texans have been having now for 2 straight seasons. And now it's a new offensive staff. And it just seems like anytime teams try to heat them up, they struggle figuring out how they want to handle those situations. And I think tonight was another very good example.
Well, and they were already moving things around. They put Jarrett Patterson back at center of this game, which I looked like kind of a bizarre decision. Like this seems like
Jake Andrews is hurt.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like it's insane that they are already back to having to go back to a different center. Like it, when the whole point was that they cannot get anybody right. So that was frustrating. They had the two big ones that really stood out to me in terms of like they cannot get this blocked up. Tyke Smith obliterating Dare Ogunbowale on the 32 off
that
the
was a
right
tough
side.
one. Well, that's the problem is you have that blocked up.
Right,
That's a skill issue.
Yeah, that one was a skill issue. And like CJ Stroud, you can tell that he thinks it's blocked up. And Troy Aikman even did a good job on the broadcast being like, CJ Stroud's standing there like he thinks he has this blocked up because he does. Because I think they only had 4 actual rushers on that play. It's just that Ogunbowale gets blown up and obviously he gets the sack there. And then there was one later in the middle of the third quarter, about 5 minutes left. Tampa Bay sends a coffee house blitz with Levante David where they have Levante David and one of the safeties to the right side of the offensive line. They send the safety immediately, and David steps down like he's going to blitz. The running back goes to pick up the safety. David reinserts after the back, kind of commits to the safety. He gets an immediate sack onto CJ Stroud. And so I feel like in a game where you already know you're going to have so many issues against Todd Bowles, it somehow felt worse than it should have been.
You combine that with the fact that this team still cannot run the ball. 33% design rushing success rate for the Texans in this game. So if you're not going to be able to run the ball, this is how the house of cards starts to fall apart. If you're not going to be able to run the ball on early downs and you're going to be in disadvantageous down and distances later on, and you're putting yourself in defined passing situations and you allow teams to blitz you in those situations and you can't pick those up, everything starts to crumble a little bit. And then you combine that with the receiving talent, being a step down from what it's been, Nico Collins, and we're getting a lot of like Justin Watson snaps right now and Xavier Hutchinson. And so I just think it's a pretty fragile situation for the Texans offensive line right now. And I don't think CJ Stroud was perfect today, but I think this remains kind of an uphill battle with the personnel and with just some of the systemic issues this team continues to have.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm probably pretty out on them fixing the offensive line over the course of the year and like fixing a lot of the pass protection issues. I think for them, the avenue is just you get to a point a little bit later in the year, Christian Kirk maybe is a little bit healthier. You get some of your tight ends back. Some of your rookies just start to play a little bit better, get a little bit more familiar in the offense. And by early November, you can just hit on enough of these chunk plays and like you have enough threat with some of these, all these different skill players that you can at least get by with the offensive line being what it is. That is still to be determined, obviously, but that is at least like some avenue for hope for them.
The last thing I want to mention, just in the bucket of frustrating moments with the Texans, so many penalties just shooting themselves in the foot today. Just little tiny things. Like on the first drive, they get an illegal hands to the face on Derek Stingley that should not have been an illegal hands to the face. It gives the Bucs a first down. Christian Harris blows up a run in the backfield inside the Bucs 5 after the Texans go for it. He gets a face mask on that play, 15 more yards. Like there are just so many of those in this game for the Texans. And that's tough in a game where you lose, like where you lose in the last minute and you have so many chances to win the game. And so to combine the goal line situation and 3 or 4 like potentially drive swinging penalties over the course of the game. This is one where if I were a member of the Texans coaching staff, I would be thinking about this one for probably longer than I should.
Yeah, I would too. The only thing the only silver lining I have for this Texans team is that this Bucs team I think looks pretty good again. And the Rams team that they played in week 1, given that Stafford looks the way that he looks, also looks good. And they've been, even though the offense has been frustrating again, very competitive in both of these games. And the defense has mostly been what it's supposed to be. So 0-2 start for the Texans, which is incredibly frustrating, but they at least still feel like an extremely competitive team against a lot of what are supposed to be the NFL's best.
I think that the defense is an incomplete and kind of top heavy sort of unit with the front seven specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that this Bucs team, we mentioned it, did a very good job of isolating the weaknesses and kind of marginalizing the strengths, especially when it comes to the run game. I'm not sure every offense they play will be capable of doing that to them. And I don't think we mentioned this. I can't remember at some point last week about how the first 2 games of the season being the Rams, which is going to like put your pass protection rules on all Madden mode for the entire game. And then Todd Bowles, it's a tough start. It seems to me, like based on the way things are currently structured, that the Texans are going to have to win some ugly games this year. I think that they are capable of doing that. Unfortunately, you have enough of those sliding doors moments over the first 2 weeks that you come up short, even though your defense probably plays well enough for you to win both of them.
Yeah, they are very fortunate that they get 2 division games over the next 2 weeks. Hopefully that is enough of a get right for them, but we'll see.
Last thing I'll say about this game, watching Derek Stingley and Mike Evans play football against each other, I could do that all day. Like, just two like distinct players that just have like, there's really nobody like either of them playing the position. Like, Surtain doesn't really play the ball in the same way that Stingley does, with like the same flair. And so you have Mike Evans just like being who Mike Evans is, and then you have Stingley just the way that he like rises up in those contested catch situations and plays the ball in the air. It's like balletic. Like, there's just very few players in the league that have ever been able to do that with like the grace that he's able to do it. And so watching those two guys go at each other today was truly a pleasure. Like, I did not want to leave this conversation without at least mentioning that.
Surtain is an amazing player, but Surtain is almost boring in that he's good because it's so technically refined. And so like some of what Surtain does is just like, I mean, like, you know, he just broke that play up because his footwork is incredible and all that stuff. And Stingley does have very good technique, but like you said, he plays the position like a flying squirrel or something. Like, he just has that unbelievable, explosive, super quick. Like, everyone like really was worried about his arm length coming out of college, but like it never really shows up when he's playing the ball because of how explosive he is and just how well he's able to twist his body to go get the ball. Like, he's a fantastic player. And watching him do that to Mike Evans, who is significantly larger human than him, is incredibly impressive.
All right, we made it. It is currently 12:50 a.m. in Chicago, 1:50 a.m. for any of you psychos watching on the East Coast. So if you stuck with us, we sincerely appreciate it. We're going to be doing this all season, Monday and Thursday night recaps live on the YouTube channel throughout the entire year. Before we get out of here today, and I'll probably mention this on the pod because I know not everybody is going to be listening to this, but just want to say thank you to you and Dave for holding it down on the Sunday night recap show yesterday. I had a family medical thing that I was dealing with, and so really appreciate being able to trust you guys to kind of take over when I wasn't able to get there. I can't tell you how hard it was to miss that and how much it hurt me to miss one of those Sunday night recap shows, but appreciate the understanding from everybody involved and from all of the listeners. So excited to be back. Everyone is fine. Everything is okay. So no worries moving forward, but just wanted to acknowledge the work that you guys did and also just the understanding for everybody out there, because it is not easy for me to miss what are very important Sunday night shows. We only get about 20 of them a year. So thank you to everybody on all fronts there, and excited to get back into the swing of things with our schedule over the course of the week. For now, that's all we got. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon.